We are ready to make our first actual player buff. This buff is gonna be player buff speed, and this buff will modify turret rotation speed. To achieve this, I've added two functions inside Asteroid Game Pawn. One is get turret rotation speed and another one is set turret rotation speed, and you can see the implementation here. Then I also modified player buff a bit. I've also added this function called getOwnerPlayer. This function simply returns a pointer to the owner. And you can see implementation here. And that's it. For this we can rename this BP test buff to BP underscore buff speed. If you don't have this testing buff, you can simply click Blueprint class and select player buff here. Now let's open it. Speed buff is not very complicated. First of all, inside event onInit, I store initial turret rotation speed inside blueprint variable, so we can restore it later. Then I simply set turret rotation speed to this buff turret speed, and this variable has default value of 250. Then inside event onDinit, I check if we have a valid owner, and if we have, I set turret rotation speed back to initial turret rotation speed. Inside player blueprint, we already have a function that creates this buff speed, but we don't really want to rely on this custom setup because we would like to have a default setup here. So we're gonna just change starting duration to 3. So now when we press compile and play and press 0, our turret is much faster, and that's great. Everything seems to be working fine. However, if you press 0 multiple times, you will see that there is actually a bug. When there is no more buffs left, we still have a big turret speed, and we're gonna fix this problem right now. To fix this problem, I decided to reset buff's duration if we trying to add a buff with the same class. And you can see it like here, buff is ticking, then if we add the same buff, the duration just resets to the starting point. And let's see how I've done it. The code is not very complicated. First of all, I'm iterating over pending add buffs and check if we have a buff with the same class. If we have, I simply return this buff because all initialization for this buff was already done. Then below I check if we have player buff that has the same class, so I'm using this index of by predicate, and if the found index was valid, I simply get this buff from player buffs and I call this reset duration function. This is actually a new function inside player buff, so it's a simple void function that is called reset current duration, and this function simply resets current duration to starting duration, and I call this function inside init as well. And now when you press play, you should have the same result as I here, and that's it. Now guys, you can try to make your own buffs. For example, you can make buff slow mo, you can try to use another turret, because in our system it is very easy to make another turrets. And remember that programming is learned by doing some stuff, so I encourage you to try it and add some of your buffs. In the next video we'll try to add a spawner for this buff, so we can pick up buffs by shooting at them like at asteroids.